Welcome to episode number 327 of Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a video podcast from the Tux Digital Network. If you're new to the show, Destination Linux is a podcast perfect for all experience levels. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the podcast for you. My name is Ryan.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Jill.
And on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the Raspberry Pi supply chain shortage and why this is hurting open source and what's going to be done about it. Then we're going to discuss Firefox 114 and its new features, which I've heard Michael is blown away by this release. He's never seen anything like it.
So
Plus,
blown away.
We have our tips, tricks, and software picks, all of this and so much more coming up right now on Destination Linux. This week in our community feedback, we receive feedback from Green Knight. And if you want to send in your own feedback, you can go to tuxdigital.com/contact and send us an email or join our forum at tuxdigital.com/forum. You can also find us on Discord. You can hang out with the community, game with the community. We have a movie section, TV section, fit and fitness section, all of that on tuxdigital.com/discord. So Green Knight writes us to say, do you think the Green Knight is in reference to the Renaissance dinner theater where you root for either the Green Knight, the Blue Knight, or the...
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about like the medieval times stuff?
Yeah.
Medieval
Medieval
times.
times. They're
That's
great.
it, yeah.
It could be that. I was kind of hoping it was a merge between the Dark Knight and Green Lantern for some reason.
Oh, yeah, because they do that in some of the comic book things there. Well, Green Knight, you have to write us back and let us know where the Green Knight comes from.
Yeah.
They say, I don't normally take the time to do this type of thing because they're busy fighting crime, of course. But this latest episode was great. I thought it would be interesting to tell you that in the military, we would ask the new guy, gal, to get us an ID 10T form. It was funny at first, but when the new guy, gal would go ask the higher up, it was hilarious. Even better when someone would yell at the new guy, gal, you don't know what an ID 10T form is, recruit? Really? Get out of my face. After that happened, the person would always stop and let them in on the joke. Sad to say, I fell for this for a minute. That is hilarious. So
Yeah.
I didn't know
never
this
would
was a
fall
thing.
for this kind of thing. We would never fall for this kind of thing, except for last week when we did.
Last week when Jill did it to
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yes. See, we showed everybody. We made a joke about how Jill is savage, but now you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Aw, OMG. Thank you, Green Knight, for sharing. You know, I actually vaguely remember being told this by someone years ago from the military. So, and of course, that is the
Oh.
origin of the 1D10T joke, the military and all of its snafus. LOL.
What's the snafus reference?
I don't think she can say that on the thing.
Oh, you can't say that. Okay, so that's another. Jill, I thought you were always family friendly, and now I'm learning all kinds of things. Calling people an idiot, an
So like,
iot,
there's
Or
a
an
there's a
iot.
lot of those though.
an
Like
iot.
there's snafu and foobar and all this stuff.
Yes.
So, for those who want to know what those look, they're Google's a thing.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
not Google. DuckDuckGo it. DuckDuckGo.
Oh yeah, DuckDuckGo it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
But
You could
thank you,
say
Green Knight, for sending this information because like it's really nice to know that we're not the only people who fall for this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just new recruits. Yeah.
I realize
We're just new to it.
I can say situation normal, all messed up.
That's
And then-
another acronym. I feel like
That's what
Yeah.
snafu is.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
snafu is without the.
the
dirty-
bad words in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Boy, I
But-
would do terrible in the military. They would get me like every 5 seconds. I would be being yelled at by one of the higher ups because I would never. I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to come to you with a snafu form. Like, did I fill this out?" They're like,
Yeah, for sure.
"Again, Ryan? Really? You're this dumb every
Well,
time?"
it was actually kind of funny because after this happened, we started getting some feedback, and we got quite a few things in like YouTube comments, and we got a few emails sent to us about it. There's a lot of people who have never heard of this thing, the 1D10T. Have never heard of this. And then I found out that consistency is people who are in tech, many years ago, or if they're in tech support, a lot of people would have heard it.
Yeah.
And I talked to many people who were technologist people, who were like tech enthusiasts, had never heard this before.
Okay.
So,
yeah, you had to work.
I thought it was pretty interesting to find out like what kind of tech person would know this term. And tech support people always knew it,
Yeah.
and the people who were just in tech enthusiasts typically had never heard of it.
Mm.
So I feel like we've been like vindicated, Ryan. So,
is that what we're gonna hold on to at this point? Yeah.
yeah, I'm just gonna pretend that that's accurate.
I'll
So
say
whatever.
what did
Although-
vindicate us was the amazing graphics you did on that video. So if you haven't seen the
Yes.
video version of last week, Michael
Yes.
sits there and he says randomly, like, maybe I'll do the animation like this, maybe I'll do it like that to show people what 1D10T looks like. And you did everything you said like in real time. It was pretty awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. So
amazing.
for those who are curious, if there is an explosion in DL last week, yes,
Yes, there
is.
was.
Yeah. Why don't we get those like headlines, in the news, like explosion happens on DL, the clickbaity ones. Nobody does that for us.
We should do that in the next
Yeah.
next title of our own episode. Just make it like ridiculous.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not ridiculous. Getting an awesome service at Linode, because this episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Linode. Visit linode.com/tux. That's linode.com/TUX, and see why over 1 million developers trust Linode for their infrastructure. From their award-winning support offered 24/7, 365 to every level of user, which is very important because some companies, like, you got to pay extra to get to the full-time support. You get it all at Linode, and you get also the ease and use of setup. It's so easy to use it, and that's why developers and businesses have been trusting Linode for projects both big and small since 2003. Linode offers the industry's best price to performance value for all compute instances as well, including shared, dedicated, high memory, and GPUs. Linode makes cloud computing simple, affordable, and accessible, allowing you to focus on your customers and not your infrastructure. So visit linode.com/tux. That's linode.com/TUX and create your account. And when you do, you use that URL, you're going to get a $100 60-day free credit on your account just by being a member of the Destination Linux community. And maybe you want to try something new and mess around with some new projects you've heard, and you can do that all that by piece if you want to, or you can go to their app marketplace and quickly and easily set up all sorts of stuff, including servers for Minecraft and Valheim. Or if you want to build a website, you can set up Plesk and WordPress and so much more. So visit linode.com/tux to get started. That's linode.com/TUX.
So speaking of Minecraft servers, yesterday I was at an event where they kind of take all of the homeschooling options and a little festival, and they bring it all into this community center, and people are kind of showing off all of the different tech and things that you can work in, and different curriculums that you can work in with kids that are homeschooling. Because like many parents, I've been very disappointed with the level of schooling in the public schools and things that have been going on. And what was interesting there were two things I saw that immediately were familiar and had lots of crowds around them. The first one was a Raspberry Pi booth. Now, it wasn't just Raspberry Pi, but the Raspberry Pis were on display, and they had Legos, and they were showing demonstrations of robotics and things that they were creating, and had a curriculum around that, which was super popular with the kids
Nice.
that the parents were bringing around. And they also had a Minecraft situation set up, because Minecraft is very educational as well. People are creating circuits and other things in there. Very, very cool stuff. The problem is that when we were kind of going through the curriculum for the robotics creation and stuff, there is no access to Raspberry Pis right now,
Yeah. I was
because
about to
they've
say
been
that they had a booth of Raspberry Pis, and like, wow, they actually had Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
Wow.
they had them, but that's kind of the question I asked, right? Is what do we do, because we can't get a hold of any Raspberry Pis? And I was mostly asking because I have some, sure, but there are a lot of people who haven't got one, don't have them yet, and they've been out of stock forever. And so they kind of were holding on to, well, hopefully the stock returns and things get better and people can get them. But so this Raspberry Pi shortage, the supply chain issue that's been going on for, is it going on 3 years? Am I exaggerating that? Or is it at least 2, right?
It's 2 for sure, but
Two
I
for
think
sure.
it's maybe 2.5, something like
Two
that,
and
but
a
it's definitely
half.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really hurting things like the educational industry, people who are wanting to do homeschooling, STEM education. Schools can't get a hold of them. Engineers, of course, the EOT devices or 1D10
Of
devices
course, the EI
out there.
devices.
Yeah. People can't use them for their media centers, retro gaming. All of these things have been hit hard because of the fact that the Raspberry Pis aren't available. And I know, Michael, me and you ordered the 2 new yellow kits for Home Assistant, for
Right.
instance.
And you need a
Since
Raspberry
that
Pi for that.
since that time, I've been doing RPI locator every single week, sometimes 4 or 5 times a week, just checking at different times and everything else. No Raspberry Pis available that we need, because specifically for Home Assistant, you want a
Mhm.
4 and you want with at least 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now you can get Raspberry Pi Zeros and other things like that, but for what we're wanting to do, you need something a little more powerful to put into that yellow kit, which we talked about in a prior episode. Why that's so cool. But we're gonna get our yellow kit, which was still in development, probably before we ever get our hands on a Raspberry Pis at
Yep.
this point to run them, or we have to repurpose them or steal them from Jill's house, which I'm not sure how good Jill's security is, but we'll let you know because Jill has
It's
like
like
140 of them. Dang it, Jill! Don't
that
show them off in front of us.
that was the last one I bought. In fact, when I first started Destination Linux back in 2020, I picked this up.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. The keyboards are in stock sometimes as well,
Yeah.
and it seems like the UK and Europe obviously have a much easier time because I do see them become available there far more often than I see them come available in the US. And then there's the scalper problem.
Oh,
So
yes.
there's lots of them out there on eBay and things, for $170,
Yep. Triple the price
$185.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's all these scalpers out there who are utilizing these same sites that I'm using, but they're going in and grabbing up all the stock and then charging a bajillion dollars for them because, well, people are hateful and that's what they do to
Mhm.
mess up this whole hobbyist educational institution enthusiast market by doing stuff like that. And I couldn't help but think, and this is kind of what I want to bring to both of you, how much this is damaging Linux and open source. Because we kind of talked about, oh, it sucks. I can't get a hold of my Raspberry Pi 4. But think about the time before the supply chain issue hit. We were
Yeah.
seeing Raspberry Pis in Best Buy. They had a whole rack of them. We saw them in Targets, in
Mhm.
micro centers. Basically, this device that was introducing the world to open source and Linux was starting to be everywhere. And if you've gone to Target or Best Buy or Micro Center recently, guess what they don't have any display booths for anymore because
Yeah.
they don't have them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
it's definitely a shame because there's so much that you can do with the Raspberry Pi, and there's so many projects and stuff that you can use to learn. And the whole purpose of the Raspberry Pi was created for the educational value,
Yeah.
and the fact that it was becoming so important to the open source ecosystem and the introduction of people to Linux and open source, because it's easy to convince someone to pay $35 or $50 or something like that to get an entire computer that they can just connect to their TV or whatever and be able to build whatever they wanted with their computer and kind of try new things. And it's so much easier to convince people to try that sort of stuff than it is to, like, hey, get another laptop or take an older laptop and do all sorts of that sort of thing. It's affected open source more so than we really gave it credit for because of how impactful the Raspberry Pi is in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been happening is with the chip shortage and Raspberry Pi shortage, it's just been, of course, very catastrophic, honestly, for the Raspberry Pi company. And other manufacturers have stepped up and made alternative boards that have been able to get, those companies have been able to get product out, and they're much more powerful than the Raspberry Pis are now because it's been a few years.
It's true, but
And
the
it's true.
problem is because we're going to talk about Michael's going to talk about some alternatives later in the show that people
Yeah,
can check out. The
Yeah.
problem is there's not a one-to-one compatibility across the board,
correct.
and Raspberry Pi has done the best job in creating a software ecosystem in which,
Yes.
let's say you go and do the Lego project or that educational booth that I went to where they're using it for robotics. They're utilizing a Raspberry Pi. Their software was written for Raspberry Pi. And while I could get one of these other devices, Raspbian specifically, so if I can get one of these other devices, I don't know that I'm going to have that same ease and compatibility. Or if I'm brand new to that software, I've never touched a
Yeah.
Raspberry Pi. I'm just going through the setup for the first time. And I've got this other board that I'm looking at that doesn't work the same way as a Raspberry Pi or the IoT ports and things. I did not say it's, did I just say IoT ports? The ports are not
IOTS.
the same on the side. Those things are going to throw everything off to the point where it's cool. I like that we have alternatives, but it starts to make me question, like, why are the alternatives able to get product out and Raspberry Pi can't? Is it just a situation that the scalpers are just buying up all
I th-
of the inventory and messing it up for Raspberry Pi, and they are producing just as much as anybody else, but there are other boards out there getting made and produced and things. So I get
it's
the
interesting
supply chain
point.
issue, but it doesn't end.
It
Yeah.
is it's an interesting point, but I think it's because the Raspberry Pi has a different processor than the other ones do, or they have different like components that make it easier for them to get it. Because the specific thing that the Pi is wanting to use, it has to use whatever it was designed to use for. So they can't swap out pieces here and there because it's a embedded computer, so it's all on one thing. So if they were to swap out things, they would like maybe break compatibility. So they're kind of limited in what they can do, and maybe people are buying up those components in addition to buying the actual completed product and then trying to sell it on the scalping stuff. So
Yeah.
maybe that's like they're trying to battle with, because the specs of the Raspberry Pi are also open. We know what is in like every part of it. So maybe there are even companies who are competing with the Raspberry Pi that are buying pieces that the Raspberry Pi needs, making it harder for them to build. I think there are many facets and many elements of that happening. I don't know if that's happening, but I mean, there's different ways that this could be affecting them.
Yeah.
And I think that these other devices are more interesting because of they're more powerful. But your point about the compatibility is definitely a factor of
Absolutely.
why people still want to get a Pi.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the for a lot of people who don't know, the reason why compatibility is not because the Raspberry Pi has this, walled garden ecosystem like Apple does or anything like that. It's just because of the ARM processors, that the way they are built, they're not really compatible with other ARM processors. So the way that x86 is, you can have one x86 product, like that CPU could be compatible with pretty much anything that's based on x86 in general, but that's not how ARM works. So if you build something specifically for a chip, you need that chip to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you have to do some translation layer. And the ports I was thinking of is the GPIO ports. Those specifically, the pins where you're connecting hats and
Oh yeah,
different lights and other things, that being the same across different boards is super
Absolutely.
important. And all
Mhm.
the attachments and accessories and everything that's been created for Raspberry Pi versus these alternate boards, you'd have to do a lot of research to be like, well, is all the stuff I want to use today and in the future going to fit that form factor of that alternative board of
that's
Raspberry
true.
Pi versus now? And so that's what creates some of the problem.
Yeah, and like you guys were saying, the Raspberry Pi ecosystem and the community is fantastic. And it's set up perfectly for schools and tinkerers. And a lot of that has to do with the Raspberry Pi Foundation. We kind
Yes.
of forget about that because that was how it got spread around the world and with the awesome tutorials and
Yeah. It's just
mods
been
and
amazing.
hats and yeah, it's really been amazing. And I have heard that the Raspberry Pi, one of the chipsets that it needs is made by Sony, and Sony was having an issue getting some of those out. So that's been part of the
Well, come on, Sony, quit
I
making
know.
cartoons and make
I
those chips for
know.
us.
So
Okay, no, continue making the cartoons because they're awesome, like specifically Spider Verse, and then also do the chips
Make
too.
chips. Yeah.
You know,
Do
yeah,
both.
do both at
Darn
the
it,
same time.
Sony. Because we like
Yeah.
your cameras. We talk about your cameras all the time on Hardware Acts. You owe us, basically.
Yeah,
yeah.
we also like your
Yeah.
movies and stuff. Well, most of some you're
Some.
okay, specifically Spider Verse. It's good.
Yeah. Just to talk about
Spider-Verse.
Spider Verse.
Maybe not
But
all of their
hey,
movies, but
this podcast is not here to deliver bad news to anybody. I mean, we just did,
Correct.
but we're going to make you happy here in a
Yes.
second, I think. So, the Raspberry Pi Foundation has been working to try to address the supply chain issue. So, there's a couple things before we get into this that I've seen. Number one, certain stores that sell, because not every store, online stores have Raspberry Pis they're selling. If you go to the Raspberry Pi site, it'll tell you which stores sell in your particular country and things like that. But those stores are now requiring people to sign up and do things like create a full profile and set up two-factor authentication and other things just to be able to buy one to keep all the bots and all of that stuff away. So I appreciate there are stores out there that are doing that, right? To try to keep, because obviously for them, they're just selling a bunch of product. Why should they care? But
right.
again, this is a very important product. This isn't just some, I don't know, gaming GPU, right? This is
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
helps people in all walk, kind of like how open source builds bridges in the digital divide, no matter your income level. The Raspberry Pi is a full computer as well to some people. That's all they can afford and have access to. So it's more important than any of these other devices, I think, in so many ways.
Yeah, and not to mention with just industry in the in robotics world, in
Yeah.
manufacturing. I mean, it has penetrated every area, of work and needs and AI in our world. It
Yeah.
really has.
So, the Raspberry Pi Foundation again is saying they're going to fix this. In 2022, the foundation announced that it had increased production by 50%. The foundation also partnered with a number of distributors to ensure that it's more widely available. And the Raspberry Pi boss, Eben Upton, says the micro manufacturer ovens will crank out 1 million units in July after years of supply issue restraining sales. So
Nice.
Mhm.
those ovens
Woohoo!
are working overtime there. Upton said the Fruiterer shipped 800,000 units in Q1. Fruiterer? I like that. Is
Yeah,
that their
fruiter. Yeah.
Fruiterer? In Q1 of 2023, its worst result since
Bless
2015, and a number that buyers usually acquire in just a single month. So while it's good news we get 1 million, right, that are pumping out, they were selling so many and there's so many people are buying that we're still pretty far behind.
Yeah.
But he's seeing a rapid recovery in silicon supply recovery. He attributed Sony's willingness to stockpile the non-silicon elements required to build out the single board computer. So much like what you were saying, Michael, it looks like Sony is stepping up. And I
Yeah.
guess they could create movies and these chips as well,
Mhm.
which is good.
I think
Um,
it's really good that they're
yeah,
doing these sort of things. I mean, you were saying they have movies and chips, yeah, but I think it's great that they're doing this because the effort involved in creating these is a lot of complexity with different manufacturers and vendors, and the effort they're putting in is just really nice because they said that it requires them to stockpile stuff in order to make it work. And there's been a lot over the course of the past couple of years. There's been a lot of companies who are hesitant to actually do any stockpiling because they feel like they're going to waste their money. And this is what's really kind of created the supply chain issues because there's so many companies who are trying to like hedge their bets. And because of that, they're creating this issue that they wouldn't have necessarily even had if they weren't trying to, not necessarily Sony, I just mean in general, like the manufacturer companies in general.
sorry, Michael. I'm sure what you said was amazing, but I was on rpilocator.com seeing if any of the stock had refreshed,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the answer is not for the US. So, darn,
Yeah.
we're still
Well,
waiting.
it's not July yet, so we'll probably still have to wait until the end of July.
Oh, months are confusing. I never know what month I'm in. The other thing that's amazing with the Raspberry Pi Foundation is this. What could you do in a market in which people are willing to pay double, triple the price? Well, you could raise prices across the board and people would pay them from you. Like, why don't you get that extra profit that all the scalpers are getting? That's what the
Mhm.
GPU market did. They're
Yeah.
like, hey, people are willing to pay $1,200 for this video card that we originally were going to sell for 600. Let's make our next cards $1,200 because people clearly have that much money to spend on a GPU. But the
Exactly.
Raspberry Pi Foundation has promised that they plan to keep the prices the same across the board, which tells you how committed they are. And that's one of the other reasons why it's hard to look for alternatives
Yeah.
because I love so much about what the Raspberry Pi Foundation is. Now, I could hear in my head immediately like someone commenting like they found something the Raspberry Pi Foundation did they didn't like one time. And this is there's just no
Yeah.
perfect business, right? But a lot of the stuff they do is really, really good. And things like this make me have a lot of faith in that foundation and the company and what their true mission is. Because I mean, they could easily crank the prices double and still sell a bajillion of these.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, easily. Even the price, double the price itself, is not that drastic. Like
Yeah.
they could have they could even increase it like 20-30% and still make an extra market up. And that, but that they're not doing that. They're not even, it's not even a possibility that they're even considering it, which is why the Raspberry Pi Foundation is so important that they created this and stuck to it because when they first originally created the first Raspberry Pi, it was $35. And
Exactly.
now you can still get a Raspberry Pi for $35,
Yeah.
even though it's been improved many, many times. And you can still, like the guarantee that they made, it's still being held up, which is, in the tech industry, rare.
Yeah. And as
Yeah.
Nico says, the Raspberry Pi Foundation is a charity and not a profit driven company. So they're able to make decisions like that. Because if it was a profit-driven company, everyone would just be like, if they raise the prices, that's just smart business, capitalism. Yes, they would be mad at them for not raising the prices and
Yes,
dealing with
especially
this. So
stockholders.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, and another point to make is that actually people are willing to pay MSRP for hardware, even though the Raspberry Pi hardware is now older, to remain in the incredible, robust, and the very well established Raspberry Pi ecosystem.
mhm.
So, and I think we're going to get a Raspberry Pi 5 soon because of this.
Yeah,
I know it's coming because they've got to compete with the other competitors
sure.
that have taken
This
some
has
of their
put them
market.
behind in so many ways. We
Yeah.
probably would have already
Yeah,
had a Raspberry Pi 5
Yeah,
had
probably
this
be on
whole
exactly.
6 by
situation.
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. It probably I have because there was speculation when I bought this Raspberry Pi 400 that the Fis were coming. So,
right.
that was a
I
thing.
mean, they thought that people were expecting the 4 to come out later than when it did.
Yeah.
And then, so when that happened, they were expecting, okay, well, now we're going to get the 5 and the 6 even faster too, probably. But at this point, because of the supply chain issues, they've been behind so much. And I think that they're going to probably do this, but I think it's going to be a gradual setting instead of the way that the Raspberry Pi 4 was released. It was just kind of like out of nowhere and no one expecting it. Like
Yeah.
they were 6 months ahead of time when people were expecting to actually do it. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to do is they're going to make all of the Raspberry Pi 4s that they're out of stock for, and then do this. And then once they're out of that stock, announce the 5 and have a bunch of 5s available too. So I think that
Mhm.
this July thing, they're going to have a ton of stuff being done for the 4 and then maybe some for the 5. And then once they get all of that out, they're going to release it. So instead of having a supply chain issue with the 5, they're going to use this time to build up a stockpile for it.
Yeah.
You know what country I love is India, and all of our listeners in India, you have Raspberry Pi 4 Model B 8 GB versions in stock. So if
Mhm.
you want to send some our way,
Yeah.
you just letting you know you can. You can. There. Just FYI. So
You're
that's it. I
still
mean,
on the Raspberry Pi locator?
shut up, Michael. I'm busy trying to find a Raspberry Pi 4 8 GB version here. I need about 3, 4, 5 of them. This is just, I think it's important that we covered this because
Yeah.
number one, I don't know everyone really took the time because I know when I was doing this, of appreciating how much Raspberry Pi has spread the love and word of open source and Linux out there. Number two, all of the impact that it's having. And three, how awesome the foundation is and the fact of how they're kind of treating business and trying to get this back on track. So hopefully they're able to get there.
And Ryan, getting back earlier about schools, is that fortunately a lot of the schools, I know my local school districts, they bought thousands of pies when they were
Yeah.
available. So a lot of the classes are still being taught with pies. So fortunately they thought ahead.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, until they start burning out and things, but hopefully
yeah.
supply chain will be there eventually. Now, this brings an interesting question: pie or cake? Now, for me, a pie is clearly superior to a cake. Michael?
Well, the real question is pie or cupcake, Ryan?
Yeah. I was going to say cupcake.
Oh man, I would go with pie more
I
than
would go with
cupcake.
pie as well.
I mean, pie's delicious. It's got fruit fillings or other fillings inside of it. You get
And it's also a different kind. Like the different kind of pie has a completely different texture than the other
Yeah.
kinds of pie. Like there's so
True.
many. Like with a cake, it's always
varieties
the
of pie.
same. Really, it's the
I
same
love
No,
it.
texture and
Nico
Lemon
just
meringue.
consistency.
went in there and said donut. Like,
Yeah.
Nico, are you even listening or are you on
I
RPI
love donuts.
locator? Nico's one of our patrons, by the way, joining us live
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So donut is not a part of this equation. However, if I had to choose, probably donut.
Yeah, donut is probably my
Depends on where the
favorite of the
donut's from.
desserts.
That's true. That's true. There are different types of different companies have different quality donuts, and you can have we should do like a comparison on the next episode of like Dunkin' Donuts versus Krispy Kreme or something.
There you go.
We can all agree that raspberry pies to eat are delicious. So
Yes. Raspberry pies to eat if you
Yeah.
can find them.
Yeah.
If you can
If
find
you
them.
can find them.
So This episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Bitwarden. Speaking of Bitwarden, it's one of the first things I install on every device that I have. And as soon as I get my Raspberry Pi 4 8 GB and install Raspbian on it, I'm going to put Bitwarden on there because it works everywhere. A password manager of software allows you to have peace of mind knowing that your online accounts are secure. So I want you to go to bitwarden.com/TUX. That's /tux right now so you can get started. It provides you tools to store all your passwords in a secured vault, auto generate those passwords and usernames for you, and even automatically fill them in on the login form so you don't have to. You can access your data across all kinds of devices, your web browser, mobile apps, desktop applications, even the command line. So if you have a headless Raspberry Pi or a headless server, you can still use Bitwarden there. Bitwarden seals and encrypts your private data with end-to-end encryption before it ever leaves your device, so you know you're the only person with access to your data. So go to bitwarden.com/tux, but consider signing up for the premium account because it's $10 a year. You get a gigabyte of encrypted file storage, two-step login with YubiKey, U2F Duo, Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator, priority customer support for less than $1 per month. How could you not? Go to bitwarden.com/TUX to get started. And thanks again to Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
In the news this week, we're going to be talking about the latest release of Firefox, which is Firefox 1.14. And as Ryan mentioned in the intro of the show, I am super excited for this incredibly featureful. I'm okay. That's a joke.
I don't feel it. I'm not feeling the excitement, Michael. I feel like you're making a joke out of this. And 114
I
is
literally just said it was a joke. Yeah.
oh. It's incredible, Michael.
It's incredible because there's like some changes that were incremental and improvements and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
So you're saying 114 is not exciting.
I'm saying, okay, I don't think Firefox has been exciting for many releases. Like, I use Firefox. It is my main default browser. I love Firefox. There's so many features and reasons I love Firefox. I've made videos about why I love Firefox and the cool features that it can do that other browsers can't do, like the awesome bookmark search feature that most people aren't even aware it has. And I made a video about that. And Firefox container tabs are amazing. There's so many cool things that Firefox has. But for the past like 10 releases, I don't know of anything that's all that notable in terms of like, oh, there's a new release. Let's talk about this particular release. They've done some cool things. They've done some improvements here and there and like some back end stuff. And they've made bookmarks more searchable in the bookmark menu. And that's kind of nice. But I use the sidebar for my bookmarks because it's more efficient and it already kind of has the searching anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's also the new UI for the DNS over HTTPS stuff. That's nice.
Good.
But it's not like, oh yeah, we got a new release. It's
well,
more
what
like,
do
hey,
you
thanks,
want? What do you want from them, Michael?
I want them to include container tabs by default and stop making it a separate add-on.
All right, that's a good one.
They should do that.
Yeah.
I also want them to enhance some of the features they haven't updated in years. Like, for example, the bookmark search hasn't really been touched in years, and they could there's certain things that they could easily integrate with the container tabs if they did that, because the container tabs and the bookmarks are not connected and they should be connected. That would make the container tabs even more amazing. There's plenty of things they could do,
I have to agree with you. And so everybody hears this a second time. We've probably been one of the biggest supporters of Firefox and telling people to use Firefox forever. But we have to call a spade a spade. And here you have a situation in which browsers are doing really exciting things that are keeping up with where people's attention is going. For instance, you have Bing including ChatGPT by default, right? You have Google with Google Bard. You have Vivaldi, who's then gone in and said, hey, we don't have the money to make that kind of resource, but we're going to make ChatGPT available within our Vivaldi browser, and we're going to circumvent the Microsoft kind of pieces of it so you don't have to sign in with Microsoft account or other stuff and make those things kind of available. So you have these browsers who are doing cool things, even ones that don't have the budget to go create a Bard or a ChatGPT. And then you have Firefox, who's already fighting for its life in so many ways. And it's kind of like, hey, we updated a UI and the DNS saying your bookmarks are searchable now. Huh? Isn't that cool? Like,
we've made it possible to reorder your extensions list in the extensions panel. which no one asked for. Who cares?
Oh, here's another big one. Pocket recommendation content can now be seen in France, Italy, and Spain.
Yeah.
Finally!
Wonderful.
I
finally.
know our fans over there are going to explode with excitement because nothing is greater than pocket recommendations, you know? I just open my browser and wait for them. Like, please send me something,
Please,
Pocket.
Pocket, give me recommendations.
Well, I think one of the major things that they improved in this version is web transport for for doing a game streaming and live streaming. And right now, in fact, we are using a service that we have to use Chrome with because WebRTC just works better with Chrome or
Mhm.
Chrome-based browsers like Vivaldi. And Firefox has really started to step it up with the WebRTC because they see that everyone has been complaining about it.
Well, yeah, there not just this service, but there are dozens of
Jitsi.
services in which will say, "Hey, this is better on Chrome," or
Yeah,
they
Yeah.
will stop you from even using Firefox at this point. So
exactly.
Some of them
Firefox
will, yeah.
is this is not about like, Nico in our chat, for instance, said making a joke about you kids these days need all these fancy things in your browsers. And they just need a regular plain browser. There's a lot of people in the Linux community that could say that. We're trying to talk about a company's existing, so the few of us are not going to keep Firefox alive.
Right.
It at some point can Firefox compete with the other browsers out there on the market? And if it can't, then the company itself will just go away. Now it's an open source project, so somebody could fork it, and they already have, and create different versions and things. But the
Yeah.
Firefox that we know and love, that was such a competitor to Chrome and other things, may not exist if they can't create things. And we've talked about in prior episodes ideas of them selling VPNs and other stuff. The problem is nothing they produce is competitive. So I can go get Mulvad for the same price that I can get Firefox's VPN. They're essentially the same, a little bit
Yeah.
different servers, but essentially the same thing. Why wouldn't I just go to Mulvad? It's the same price. There's
And
no
there was a period of
discount.
time where Linux users couldn't even use Mozilla's VPN,
Yeah,
even though
then
they
they
could
release
use
it.
Mulvad.
Issue.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like every decision they make. Now, I agree, Jill. The WebRTC stuff's super important. This is a
Yeah.
good decision. The backend architecture stuff is always boring, but some of it is very necessary.
I mean,
But
it's good that they're doing that sort of stuff. It's just like that they're not doing that in any level of pace that is important. Like the whole web transport and WebRTC and the WebSockets and stuff like that, the work they're doing on it is very important, and I'm glad that they're doing it. But
It's 2
they should
years
have also
late.
been doing it
Yeah,
years
it's
ago
too
when
long.
everybody
Yeah.
else was starting and developing it, and they're just behind so much, right?
Yeah.
So it's great, but like you were saying, like there are applications that we have to use Chromium or Chrome-based stuff because of the support where they don't even allow Firefox to function with it.
Mhm.
Like, for example, we're using a new service to do this episode. That's why it's going to
Yes.
look a little bit different than in previous episodes. But we're also we're using Chromium based stuff anyway through Electron apps and stuff like that. So we actually, yeah, the entirety of for the past year or so has at least been Chromium based with Electron apps and super special custom things, but all still based on Chromium because Firefox just can't do what we need it to do.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
shame because all of us here use Firefox to do our show notes. I use it is
Yeah.
my main browser, but I can't use it to go on Jitsi to go on Video Ninja and
By the way, some of this stuff
Zencaster
works. It just doesn't work as
as
well as
well.
what Jill's
Yeah,
saying.
some
And
of it
so that's
works.
why. Yeah.
Some of
It
it
has
doesn't work, but
improved.
a lot of it does work still. But like the fact that you in some services they don't even allow you to even try
Yeah.
is a clear sign of why we need to do it. And it also is it's a shame. The reason I'm annoyed by this is because Firefox is such a fantastic browser overall,
I
and
know.
it has so many cool features like the container tabs and like the in my opinion the best bookmark system
Yeah.
of any browser. Like
Searching.
there are so many
bookmarks.
cool features that it has, but it's at a state right now that it feels like we're going back to the 90s where it's like best viewed in Internet Explorer version blah 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 blah, and now we're having that same thing happen with Chrome. And it's just like, can we not? Like, maybe we
Yeah.
could have a web that's actually open. And I know Mozilla is trying to make an open web and then trying to fight for it. But the best way to fight for it is to make support for the things that people want.
Yeah.
and do the features other people did. That container tabs we keep talking about, but that was a feature nobody else has. It's an incredible feature.
It
Every
is awesome.
privacy enthusiast out there would love this, and you don't make that default,
Yeah,
which
and
is
it's
one of
also
the
not
features that make you stand out from all the competition out there. There's
exactly.
Vivaldi doesn't have it. Nobody else has it but Firefox, one of the greatest features out there. And you're talking about a company that developed Rust. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
this
Yes.
is a company that has talent in the company that is unbelievable. And I feel like I just get this feeling, this is just my opinion, that talent is severely held back by bad leadership, because you can't have people that talented that can develop that cool of things doing these kind of releases.
Yeah, developing an entire language that
Yeah.
is now becoming adopted by so many things and becoming like the hype machine that it is. And this is a programming language getting hype. That in itself is an impressive feat to create hype over a language to make other software, you know? So the fact that they're able to do that shows the quality of developers that they have. Why can't Firefox, do that? And also just simplicity of having the container tabs built in. Like that is in
Yeah.
Yeah.
itself, you would blow people's minds if they could click on the right click the new tab and see, oh, all these different like container options. As soon as they would see those, that would be a game changer for people wanting to use Firefox. Because I've had conversations with people where they would say, why do we use Firefox instead of Chrome? Like, you could do everything in Chrome and blah, blah, blah. And then I tell them about container tabs and they get excited about it. And then I have to explain that, okay, you have to install this extension first. And then you got to get this other extension to connect this other piece with the Facebook stuff. Then you got to do this other stuff. And, all these different pieces to just have the functionality that they could just build in because they made them in the first place.
So, Firefox 114. Do we recommend people download it? Of course.
Absolutely.
Do we
Yes,
recommend you
absolutely.
use Firefox? Of course.
Yes.
Do we
Yes,
want Firefox to let itself free and
Yes.
start creating
absolutely.
amazing things?
Yeah.
Please. That's our plea to you. Like, let the developers loose, because they know what they're doing. They created things like container tabs, created an entire programming language, for God's sakes. Like, let them go, leaders. Let them just create, and you step out of the way. That's what
Yeah.
I think
And not
needs
to
to happen.
mention, we have Rust now in the Linux kernel, so much advancement is there for them to take advantage of.
Right. There you
I
go.
mean, there's so much potential, and
Yeah.
that's the thing behind it. We love Firefox, and we want people to use it because we do think that it's a worthy browser, especially with the cool innovative features like container tabs. But we also want Mozilla to see how much potential Firefox has, and that you're not giving the opportunity for the developers to actually fulfill that potential.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why we're annoyed. Not because we don't like Firefox. It's because we like it so much, and we could see where it could easily surpass Chrome. It could be unquestionably the best browser
And it
because it
once
has,
was. It once
yeah,
was.
and it
Don't
was at
take
some
that
point,
back.
yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that it has that much potential and it has the
Yeah.
innovative ideas that you don't really see in other browsers, it's a shame. And that's why we wanted to bring it up on the show, because it's something that could easily be a dominant force, and it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Jill, let's do something happy. Take us into the gaming
Yay.
section. Tell us what's going on in the gaming world.
So, our game this week comes from our Discord gaming section, where one of our listeners is discussing how much they love Homeworld Remastered.
Nice.
Homeworld Remastered is gold rated on ProtonDB, so no official Linux version, but still very, very playable on Linux with Proton. So the game describes itself like this: experience the epic space strategy games that redefine the RTS genre. Control your fleet and build an armada across more than 30 single player missions. And you can do unit types. You can do fleet formations and flight tactics for each strategic situation. The game
Ooh, we could set
actually
up the whole, what is it called? The Riker
Oh
formation?
yeah, yeah, we could
The
do
Riker
that would
formation in Star Trek. We could do, yes.
I haven't thought about that in a long time, Ryan. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. And
You could also do the Picard maneuver as
the
well.
Yeah.
there you go. So the game has over 9,000 very positive reviews, and it's received an 86 score from Metacritic, which is amazing. And I actually played the original Homeworld back in
Hmm.
1999. so so it was really nice to
It's good enough
revisit.
to be remastered, so that
Yeah.
tells you all you need to
Yes,
know right
that does
there.
show
You
you.
know.
And
Yeah.
it's been lovingly updated by the original creators, which is also cool.
Oh, what we should
Yeah.
do is take an old episode of DL and remaster it, make a new version.
Oh, I love
Ooh.
that. Yeah,
Ah,
that would be a good idea. And we cut Michael out and we put Zeb in his
that's the
place.
opposite of remastering.
You
Yeah.
know, Jill, we put Zeb in Michael's place and we remaster all the episodes
Ooh.
we've done. Yeah.
Yay, so you have
Jill, Jill, you shouldn't be in favor of that.
I'm sorry, Michael. I love you. I
Wow.
love you. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry. But it would be nice to have someone
I feel
actually
like there's a mutiny going
older
on
than me on the
on
show.
Man, did you just do shots fired at Zeb? Because Zeb's only 34. So I don't know why you would say that, Jill.
No,
So
I
rude.
love Michael. It wouldn't be
Okay.
the same without him.
He's all right. We'll keep him around, I guess.
He's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're not going to remaster it because what I think of remastering is completely different from what Ryan
Yeah.
thinks of remastering. So we'll just
Absolutely.
continue on as is.
Well,
Okay.
this game's only $34.99 on Steam, but the remastered DL will be, I don't know, $68. $68 to get the remastered Destination
seems like a
Linux
good deal.
episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Or we might have to do it because of the supply chain issues and make it 87.
Oh yeah.
There you go. And people will scalp it.
Well,
Great.
another thing about Homeworld Remastered is that visually stunning and cinematic with
Yep.
an epic soundtrack that immerses you in the gameplay. And it did that even with the original from 1999. I was blown away by that. And now
Nice.
it's just gotten even better, and you can run it in 4K, and it looks beautiful in 4K.
The problem is I love space games and I love the strategy games and I used to play them.
Yeah.
But now with kids, I have no
I don't
time to
have
sit
time.
down and like build formations and ship stuff. Maybe as my kids get older and they don't want to be around dad anymore, like then I could go back into
Yeah,
play some of
Like
these.
most
But
people in your life.
yeah, like
Yeah.
but right now it's like impossible to set time aside. I want to play these games because I love space adventure so
It's
much.
so
So
much fun.
this looks really cool. And some of the things you could see in our gaming topic on the Discord, people discussing the games they love and what they're playing
Mhm.
that week. So go check it out. Our software spotlight this week is Google Web Designer. Ew.
Mhm.
Um, those who want a GUI-based web designer where the open source options we've covered in the past may not be hitting the mark could look at Google Web Designer. However, the reason why I brought this up is I saw an article saying, "Hey, Linux people, check out Google Web Designer." And this is a really cool GUI option for you. It's not open source, GUI option out there for you to check out. The problem is it's terrible. It's like really bad, Michael. Like really, and I'm not even a web person. You know, you design the websites and stuff, but the whole template system and everything. So it was kind of sold to Linux people in this article is like, hey, go create GUI websites with this thing. But it's just for creating ads, like just ads. So we're
That's not.
spotlighting it, but I'm unspotlighting it by saying, ew.
It's very interesting.
It's the
that
unspotlight this week.
It's very interesting that you would spotlight something that you hate.
Yes.
And
I mean, you listen, you put a spotlight on a criminal when you're asking them questions, right? You know, you get that light on, it heats up, they start sweating.
Are you calling the Google web designer
A criminal. It's criminal. It's criminal crap. Now you can go in there at the very bottom and create like a web page template. And it looks like it has some motion capabilities and
Yeah.
things like that. And the whole time I'm like, why? Why would I want this thing? However, if you're in an industry in which Google Web Designer, for whatever reason, is the standard, I do want people to know, and this is the spotlight part, that it is available on Linux. So you
Mhm.
can use it if your company or whatever requires you to utilize it. Although I'd have no clue possibly why they would.
Well, maybe
So
instead of as an alternative to Adobe Dreamweaver, which
Yeah.
I
is
mean,
not
that's
as good as it
essentially
used
what
to
it
be.
is.
Yeah.
That's essentially
Except
what it is.
Dreamweaver was amazing. I used to use that. And this is like, it focuses every template. Like you scroll and scroll and scroll is ads. How to create an ad, how to implement an ad, how to have motion
It's a
graphics
Google
in your
product.
ad. I mean, good point.
Yeah.
Jill.
So
Enough said.
And Dreamweaver has majorly changed their whole interface, so it's different
Yeah.
now.
I loved Dreamweaver back in the day,
Yeah,
though.
same
Good stuff.
here. I had taught it even for a couple semesters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, for those who don't know, I used to be a full time website designer and
Yeah.
developer.
Mhm.
And I have used Google Web Designer in the past, and I've used Dreamweaver and also Front Page and all these other
Yeah.
things. And I don't like any of them.
Yeah.
But the Google Web Designer has some value here and there depending on what you're trying to do. So you could use it for making ads, for example, if you wanted to do that. I mean, I'm sure that you've not heard that it could do that, but it can. You could make ads with Google Web Designer if you wanted to. But you can also do other things. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but when I did use it, it was impressive for what I was using it for. And it's just kind of an easy way to create mock-ups in some ways. It's an easy way to get things that you're out of your head into like actual like fruition that you still need to go in and like create the code and build it. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, using these tools, whether it's Google Web Designer, whether it's Dreamweaver, it doesn't matter, they're still going to only output HTML, and you still need a server or something that's more complex than these things can do. So that's why I've never really liked them anyway, because I got to do other stuff regardless. But it is kind of a cool way to help you visualize something quickly.
Yeah.
So it could be a good spotlight in terms of visualization of what you have in your mind
Yes.
and easily build out. And then after that, do it some other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always got to go back into the code and adjust things. That's just no program is perfect that way. There's
None
Well,
of these programs can do
Jill,
anything
you are
that's
talking
valuable,
to
in my
the
opinion.
website designer, Michael, when he talks about Michael downplays how good he is at websites. He was the lead Angel Fire website developer
I
out
was
there.
about to say, like,
he had
how is this a compliment? And then you
amazing.
bring an Angel Fire. I'm like, of course, never mind. I get it. I was like, this
He-
seems wrong that you're complimenting me
he's
right
created 10 Angel Fire sites that would blow your mind with flames around
now.
the
And
text.
GeoCities for
Yeah,
sure, too.
GeoCities.
The greatest web designer ever.
No,
Yes.
Michael is
Java
amazing.
applets involved, too. Yeah.
Hey, just
Yeah.
go look
So-
at textdigital.com and you'll see the work of Michael.
Actually, yeah, Michael
Yeah, I
is
did make that, too.
very talented.
Yeah. But the thing is, this has some value in terms of mock-ups and visualization of what you have in your head. But beyond that, it's kind of like they're very limited. But it's also because it's just because the concept is limited, because you need like a WordPress system, or you need something that is going to be the back end, and these when you output HTML, that's just the front end stuff. You still need the back end stuff to deploy it. So that's why I don't really like these things. Not because they're not valuable to some people. They're just not valuable to me because they're only part of the piece in order to make the rest.
WYSIWYGs are amazing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, this is kind of a WYSIWYG, but if there's other kinds of WYSIWYGs that have back-end components too, and that's why I like those better.
Can we get one of the under construction icons
Yeah,
Nico
that's
brought
what
up
I was
on our
thinking about that.
tuxdigital.com website? You know, the ones that were on every page?
And then
People would keep coming back in anticipation, like, oh, it's still under construction. Let me refresh 10 minutes later.
How about I just make a page at tuxdigital.com/under construction?
Yeah.
And that way we could always have that there. And anytime someone wants to see it,
There
they
you
could
go.
go there.
You know what would
And
be a
then
fun project for our community? If you could send us the code and the pictures, Michael will put this on our site. We will have an alternate version of tuxdigital.com in Angel Fire style. And so you'll go to tuxdigital.com/angelfire. If you all create it, we will post it. And, we'll have the Angel Fire icons, the under construction, the
Ryan,
music
this is
playing.
a absolute
Yes.
terrible idea, and I am completely on board.
Yes,
We
I
wonder
love
if
it.
we need to do this. If anybody submits this thing, I want to do this. It's awful. We shouldn't, but I want to.
But we will.
We need an ActiveX animation and a banner that shows how many people have visited the site.
Yes, you need the hit counter.
Hit counter. A hit
That you
counter,
could just
yes.
refresh yourself and keep getting more hits to make it
Yes,
look
we
like
need a hit counter. Also, make sure that you can implement some blinking text. We need that too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
tables.
All right, so besides Angel Fire, Michael, what else do you have in the tips and tricks?
That was a tip now? Okay.
Yeah.
So while we can't get our hands on the Raspberry Pi, it seems there is some other options. There's a lot of competition that is possible because they're not able to get the Raspberry Pi. So here are some alternatives we talked about. This is the time where we're going to give you the alternatives, like we mentioned. So There's the Libre computer board or Libre computer board. It's the same form factor as the Pi 3 Model B for reuse with existing cases and power supplies, which that's a good idea. Identically designed 40-pin header enables hardware reuse by maintaining same pins for functions like the SPI, PWM, UART, and more. It also has powerful GPIO wiring tool. Libre Tech wiring tool is what it's called. And this is available on GitHub that can quickly toggle GPIOs and dynamically control DT overlays for faster design testing and all that sort of stuff. There's also the Odroid N2 Plus, which is pricier, but can also run Home Assistant easier because it's more powerful. Comes with 4 gigabytes of memory quad core, ARM Cortex A7 III CPU cluster, and a dual core Cortex A53 cluster with the new generation Mali G52 GPUs. The Orange Pi 5 is another alternative we're going to talk about. And this one's kind of expensive. It's $106, but it features 8 gigabytes of RAM, Rockchip RK3588S, 8-core 64-bit single board computer, up to 2.4 gigahertz, and support for 8K video codecs. So that is show you like how much this thing can do as an
I'm interested in the
embedded.
Orange Pi. I'm very interested in the Orange Pi. The $106, like I wish they could get this down to, I
That's
don't
hard
know
to
why,
eat
but
for sure.
85
Yeah.
bucks, 75 bucks, somewhere around there. But I still probably will pick one up. I'm very interested, but I don't think it has the same GPIO support and things like that. But just for
Right.
hardcore running, because Ubuntu, Debian, Android 12 all support this device. So just for running some different distros, maybe media server and stuff, could be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very tempted to get this one as well. And I also like the
Nice.
fact that because Raspberry Pi created this like trend, most of these things are named with something that's edible. So you have the orange pie, you have the
Yes.
banana
Banana
pie,
pie.
you have the, well, the Odroid doesn't really count in that
No
term,
one's
but
created a chocolate pie yet,
Aw.
Chocolate pie
I
is
know
delicious.
everybody
I love
loves chocolate.
pie.
Why? Like exactly. Where is the a pumpkin pie as well? I'm
Yeah.
Oh, I
curious.
love pumpkin pie.
Right?
Yes.
And there's
Oh,
cute
now I'm
animal
hungry.
boards too, the panda pies, panda boards,
Yeah.
SBCs, and
In a way, the
Pine
Raspberry Pi
64.
kind of created this whole industry, sort
Yeah.
of like.
Yeah.
Pine 64
But Jill,
boards.
you're not supposed to eat pandas. Just heads up
Yeah.
on that. Yeah. Okay.
Those are not delicious.
Glad we
They're
figured that out.
adorable, not delicious.
Well, a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. You can come join us on Discord at tuxdigital.com/Discord. And if you want to watch the show live, you can become a patron of Destination Linux.
Yeah, and watching the show live is just one of the awesome perks you get when you become a patron. You also get access to the unedited versions of the show. Those for those who aren't able to watch it live, you can still watch the full entirety awesomeness that is this show. Because we have to edit it for time, not because of content of messing up or anything. It's just editing it for
No,
time.
we never mess up. We're perfect.
Exactly. And for those who do watch it live, you can also join us in the patron only post show, which happens every week after the show, immediately right after. And you can do that by going to tuxdigital.com/membership and becoming a patron. You can also go to tuxdigital.com/store and get a ton of cool swag. We have hats, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, coasters, stickers, and so much more. So go to tuxdigital.com/store.
Michael, how can I be as cool as Ryan and have that Linux 91 hat?
You can go to tuxdigital.com/store and get that hat. You'll also be more cooler than Ryan because you'll be wearing it, not Ryan.
I'm on my way.
And we have a lot of amazing shows here on Text Digital. We have the Pseudo Show, This Week in Linux, the DOS Geek Channel, Linux Out Loud, Linux Saloon, and our newest show, Fit and Fueled. And we have Hardware Addicts with video now. So
Oh,
make sure
good
to
call,
check that
Jill.
out.
Oh, yeah. Well, we actually have Hardware Addicts with video, except for my video.
Yes,
Yes.
this is true.
It didn't record properly, unfortunately. So the first edition of Hardware Addicts with video has a giant missing component of my video. But the next episode, we figured out we're actually doing the same software testing with this episode. So the next episode of Hardware Addicts will have that solved probably.
Cool.
Probably.
Probably.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I'm excited because I think it came out fantastic. The episode was super interesting. So we'll have that linked in the description and in the show notes for those who want to check it out.
Everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you next week.
everyone. Yay, you'll be able to to
Oh,
get a Raspberry
shove
Pi
it in our
soon.
face, Jill. Why don't you just take all your cash and show it to me? Why don't you take a picture of your
love
checking
this.
account and show me your balance in there and just rub it in my face that I'm poor?
Oh, I've ran so many distros on this little guy.
I love how she just continues to
Yeah.
shove it in your face.
She's like, shut up, Ryan. Shut up.
I have
Nobody's talking to you.
Twister OS, Debian, Ubuntu. The list goes on and
Still
on.
ignoring your comments.